Hello and welcome to Unbiased, the flagship podcast from Absalom and Shepherd Attorneys. Today we've got a special guest all the way from the United States, Ed Jurkovic. Ed, how goes it?
Very well, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
It is. And how was your flight from the States?
Long, but overall, not too bad.
How are you liking Zim, Ed?
I am really enjoying it. I said to a few people, I think I'm biased because I have some great hosts who are showing me, I think, the best parts of the country. But it's been a very good stay. It's been great to see everything that's happening here, to be able to hear about it, especially from people who are working on business ideas and to see what they think about the landscape. And then I'm really excited to see a bit more of the country this week.
Awesome. So Ed is here to talk about design thinking. He's doing a number of tremendous trainings with some of the country's institutions, with some of the learners and people who aspire to be entrepreneurs. So we are breaking the mold where we normally talk about legal issues, but we are going to delve into the world of design thinking for the benefit of some of our entrepreneurial followers. So Ed, you are at the University of Notre Dame and you're part of the Palti Institute. Before we delve into design thinking, can you tell us more about what you do and what you represent?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, I work at the Pulte Institute for Global Development in the United States, which is a part of the University of Notre Dame. And at the Pulte Institute, we are development practitioners. So we work on projects around the world in partnership with other people to allow them to continue to reach their own development goals. And we do this specifically through a lens of what's called integral human development, which is a way of looking at the development of people and of societies in a holistic way. Number one, making sure that we are approaching from a position of support and accompaniment, being good partners to people, and again, recognizing that they are the authors of their own development and their own destiny. And then in the second way, to make sure that when we approach development, it's not just about material needs and goods, but also about the whole needs, the holistic and realistic needs of individuals.
So what you're saying basically is you don't impose your idea of what a solution is. You allow people to chart their own course as you help them through it.
Exactly, that's the hope, and we're working towards doing that better every day. But yes, that's exactly the idea.
Right. So Ed, you're here to talk about human-centered design, and someone watching might be wondering, what in the world is that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a good place to start. So as you mentioned, the work that we've been doing, of course, has been focused on human-centered design. Human-centered design is a methodology, a tool, so to say, within the larger framework of design thinking. So I can break it down from there. Design thinking is a methodology, a mindset, a way of approaching problem solving that focuses on solving problems by better engaging the end users or the people who are encountering those problems most closely. So in my work, when we're doing development programming, that often looks like engaging directly with the end users or the beneficiaries of a program that we might be implementing and thinking, you know, in what ways can we gather the essential insights, contextual information, and other key data and insights from these people to make sure that as we develop our programming, it is responsive to their needs. And in the same way, a business person, whether they be an entrepreneur, whether they be a lawyer, whether they be someone who's working within a large organization, when they want to approach challenging problems or complex problems, the best way to start is by understanding that problem really well, by engaging with the people who are closest to it, whether they be a client, whether they be a customer, whether they be someone who's using a service or an experience. You want to understand their specific pain points, their needs, and their expectations in order to best craft a solution to that problem.
Oh, awesome. So it's basically going to the people affected by the issue and understanding how they relate with the issue before you impose your solutions on them.
Exactly, and that's a great way of framing it, to say before you impose your solution, because that's what it is sometimes. It becomes impositional, where someone will have an idea that they fall in love with as designers, entrepreneurs, engineers, creative people like to do. They have an idea and they say, you know, this is the solution. This is the way that we should approach this problem. But the thing is, they often do that before they have a real understanding of what the problem is. And so what we want to do by engaging with the end users more actively is make sure there's a much better problem to solution fit, to make sure that there's not just an idea being put out there into the world and then you see what happens, but that we have moments along the way where we are engaging with those users to see what their expectations are and how this idea can best fit those expectations within the context that they exist within.
Awesome. And so someone might be watching a Zimbabwean entrepreneur and might be saying, that's well and fine, Ed, but practically speaking, how can I start employing design thinking methodologies into my entrepreneurship? How can I start?
Yeah, I think one of the first things to do would be to try and frame the area that you're working in, whether it be a specific industry, a specific topic, whether you know that you're trying to provide a specific good or service, and think, what is the problem at the heart of what I'm trying to provide a solution for? How can I understand better the real need or challenge that's going to be addressed by whatever I'm providing? So the first thing I think is trying to frame things and switching it from, I have this great solution, I have this great idea, to what is the problem that I'm trying to solve? So the first part would be reframe and think about that. So I'm trying to think of a good example here. We could talk about law, right?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at different legal clients, people who might be coming in, thinking, okay, maybe in a certain area of law, contract law, for example, what are the things that we're really trying to solve? What is the problem that we're seeing consistently that we want to be able to address better?
Yeah.
How can we frame that problem? And then once we have that problem framed, to think, who are the stakeholders who are most impacted by that problem? Obviously, it's going to be your clients, but it's going to expand beyond that. It'll be clients, it'll be lawyers, prosecutors, defenders, the legal system itself. It could be government or policy.
Yeah.
And thinking, how can I then engage meaningfully with those people to get a better understanding of what they need when it comes to addressing this problem in a better way? As you do that, then it allows you to begin to tailor and to prepare prototypes of ideas that can better, again, bring a better solution fit for that problem itself.
So it's basically empathy on steroids.
Yeah, that's the human-centered design process is based in empathy. The idea that you need to ground yourself and immerse yourself in the reality of the people who are encountering the problem you want to solve. And by doing that, you build empathy for them. You see, okay, this person isn't just a client that I'm trying to get money from, or even that I'm trying to help. They're a real person with their own perspective, their own needs, and their own desires. And that, I think, allows you to then take that next step and to think, okay, how can I best address the problem that I'm seeing among this group of users or clients or customers?
And that's something which I think is not really prevalent in the services industry. We see a lot of services being offered on the basis of what has traditionally been the norm. And it's not just legal services, Ed, it's any service, really. And I think it could transform the way service industries work. Which brings me to my next question. Do you have any real-world examples of institutions that use this methodology and that use design thinking successfully?
Yeah, I can think of two examples right away. One is a bit more in the world that I inhabit, a bit more of the, well, in a way, it's a bit in the development world, a bit in the kind of services space, and that's why I want to talk about it. This is an example I have not used yet. There's a company, I can't recall the name, but they produced MRI machines, medical imaging machines.
Yeah.
And they had gone into a contract with a hospital that worked primarily with children. And they were thinking, oh my gosh, there are these families who really need this service, and they're struggling, they're in really challenging situations where they're dealing with children who are very sick. And so what we wanted to do is provide an experience that's going to bring these machines and make them more accessible to families that are really in need.
In need, yeah.
And they did this. They did this, brought these machines in, and the first time the designer and the person who was leading this project watched a child go into this room, they saw that the child was terrified. Because I don't know if you've ever been in an MRI machine, it's kind of scary. You have to go inside this very small tube, and you have to be you have to stay in it for about 30 minutes as, you know, these different things are happening around you, lights and flashes and noises. And so he came out of that and he said, oh my gosh,
Shame, yeah.
like we have created this environment that is terrifying these children who are already suffering so much. And so what he did is he applied the idea of design thinking. I want to go and I want to engage with the doctors, the nurses, the parents, the children who are immersed in this experience and see what are those things that are triggering this reaction in the children.
Yeah.
And by doing that, they were able to realize that this is just a very intimidating environment and that they could create it in a way that would make it less intimidating.
Yeah.
And so they experimented with essentially creating different scenarios. Like they might have an MRI room that's has kind of dressed up as like exactly like as like a pirate ship, and instead of going into an MRI machine, they're going on a pirate mission, and they're going to be doing things like that. So they created an experience around it, and were able to create an environment that was exciting for a child to go into. And then when they were in the more challenging situation of being in the MRI machine, they had something to relate it to occupy them, to keep them, thinking about the positives.
Wow.
And they saw really significant success there. Awesome. And this is a very human-centered idea, right? Like, you want to provide this service for someone, and that service was working, right? They were getting MRI results, but if you're taking a child who's already really suffering and causing them more fear, like that's not an ideal outcome.
It's not.
Yeah.
And I wish more and more businesses would be empathetic towards their users' feelings and their users' experiences. So I'm going to ask you the follow-up to that, Ed. Do you have any examples where an organization or a business paid for not employing design thinking techniques?
Yeah, that is a great question. I want to try and think of a good example here. I think one good example that we could use would be, I think you could talk about Kodak. Kodak, the camera company, which now almost doesn't exist. They have a very small business, but they used to be one of the largest companies in the world, and certainly the largest photo company by far. And Kodak, I think, got a bit separated from the real needs of their users. And this is often the case when you have a long-standing, really successful business. Like, they were the industry leader for 100 years when it came to photos. And as the time that digital photography was starting to roll out and to arrive, they wanted to really protect their core business model, which was film photography. And so over time, as people started to adopt digital more and more, Kodak tried to pivot into that, but much too late. And often we see this kind of same challenge among larger companies where they get a bit disconnected from the real needs of their users. And so you can look at companies who do the opposite and do these things really well, like an Apple or a Google. If you think about where Apple or Google started, they did very different things in the past than what they do today. And it's because you talked about in the services industry, there's often a challenge here. Products, I think, is the same way. I think more recent companies, especially ones focused on user experiences, like tech companies, have actually done this very well because they're constantly trying to think, how can I provide my user with the best experience in every way that they're interacting with my device, my technology, whatever it might be. And so you see a company like Kodak, who, the reason this is a good example is they actually created the first digital camera. So it was not a factor of technology. Like, they had the ability to do this, but they did not respond to the changing market and the changing user interests and demands.
And what's said is they were so prominent that a photo moment was called a Kodak moment.
Exactly. So you get, and we still use that phrase, right? And I'm sure kids now, I mean, when I was a kid, Kodak was just dying out. I'm sure kids now know that phrase and they have no idea why we say it. Ed,
this has been exceptional and you've provided some nuggets, so allow me to thank you. I'm going to ask you, as we normally do, to give what you would define as your final words of advice for Zimbabwean entrepreneurs who might be following our podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd say two things. One would be, I'd encourage you to continue to dig into design thinking and human-centered design. There are so many resources, guides, trainings online that are free and easy to access. This is not rocket science. It's not a crazy idea. The idea is find meaningful ways to engage with the people that you want to serve or the people that you want to sell to work with, and use that knowledge in meaningful ways. And if you're wondering what that looks like I said, there are really good guides to saying, here's how you might do this in different scenarios. And then the second part is recognize, like I said, it's not rocket science. If you want to start right now, those two things I mentioned are a great place. Try and think about how you can reframe your ideas into problem statements. What is the problem I'm trying to solve? And then who do I need to engage with, or what do I need to immerse myself in, or what do I need to observe to understand better what that problem really looks like, so that I can make sure my offerings, my services, whatever it is that I'm doing is better aligned to that real need.
Wow, that's profound. Thank you so much, Ed. There you have it from Ed Jurkovic from the Palti Institute for Global Development at the University of Notre Dame. Guys, until we meet again, I'm going design thinking.